you're new to this community and this program, welcome to CEP Community Live. This is really designed to be a welcoming space where we come together to support people with mild cognitive impairment. We're interested in supporting people who have a diagnosis, their care partners, training the clinicians and the doctors who take care of them a little bit. But this is our online outreach program, and it's meant to be a way for our staff to come in and share a lot of helpful information, a lot of practical tools, and to connect you with not just the experts, but also people who are experiencing life after this diagnosis like you are. So we're here to do it together, one step, one insight, just one day at a time, as we say here at CEP. And if you're curious about our program, we are a program here at Emory's Brain Health Institute that works around what does the research say is best for early stage memory loss. Maybe you went to the clinic and got a diagnosis and your provider said, we want you to eat healthy and be social and stay active for your brain. And it might be a little the difficult question to say, how do we do that? And so CEP comes together to talk about some of these real life strategies, the real life topics that matter. And we learn that from the people in our program in person who have the same diagnosis and their care partners like you, and want to come in and explore some of the memory strategies, what research says about movement and nutrition and the mind diet. We talk about the emotional wellness that is a game changer on this journey. How do we support our hearts too with these changes? And we'll offer a little bit of everyday problem solving. You can see a picture of some of our classes there on the left-hand side. We've got all different kinds of programs here, that things like chair yoga, we've got functional fitness, we've got occupational therapists that we work with that you'll meet today. And we hope that this feels like a community that you can come back to week after week. You might even let us know in the chat right now where you're tuning in from, whether you're tuning in live or watching the video later. Let us know where you're at. It helps us to kind of feel connected together a little bit, even in this digital world. And we just want to encourage you to check out some of our resources. We've got a really great newsletter that'll be coming out in the next day or two with all of our February sort of happenings. If you miss any sessions, if you want to go back and watch them again, we've also been building a really great YouTube channel that has all of our videos for the past 5 years or so, where you can go back. But I also want to let you know that today's session is interactive, and we encourage you to use the chat. We want you to ask questions and share your thoughts and just really reflect on your own experience. Like we said before, one of the reasons is this is a really supportive space. And there's no pressure to have the right answer, but there's no wrong questions. So feel free to use the chat and let us know what you think. We're talking about the power of paying attention. It might be something that you're struggling with or frustrated with, maybe something that you haven't noticed changes with. And today we'll talk about, all the things to keep in mind, but attention, we say in this program, is the gateway to memory. Attention is how we learn things, it's how we memorize things, it's how we access clear thinking. And it can be something that for some people in this community is a very challenging cognitive skill that is something that's very easy to get distracted, the way our world is right now with our cell phones and TVs. So we're going to learn a little bit today about exploring attention and ways to optimize your attention, ways to pay attention to maybe just one thing at a time. So you're going to meet Tracy today if you haven't met her before. Tracy Moon is an occupational therapist with our program. She's been with us for years and years now, and she's got a doctorate in occupational therapy from the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga. And she also has a background in sports science before that. So a lot of interest in staying active, not just, at home, but also in your hobbies and the things that are important to you. One of the things I know that Tracy's really passionate about is to helping people age with joy and grace. And she's also really compassionate about communication. So we'll talk about that today, some of the challenges and some of the changes that you can make from home. So welcome in, Tracy. Are you with us here?
I am. Thank you so much for that introduction, Megan. I'm excited to be here. And
And
like Megan
Tracy,
said, oh, good.
no, I was just going to say, I'm curious about how this topic has come up for the people that you work with every day with this diagnosis. What can you say a little bit about some of the everyday uses of the topic that we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, I like how you said that attention is the gateway to our memory. And that is really how we talk about it in our cognitive training classes. The nice thing about attention is that it is the one thing that we have a little bit of control over. We don't have control over our brain's ability to recall a memory, but we can have a little bit of control over the attention that we're paying. So that is what our focus is going to be.
I love that. I love you frame that as like attention is something that's happening right now. It's something that doesn't require us to recall information or dig back into the past. It's something that, a lot of times we say early stage memory loss can't take away what's happening right now. And so I love that. And we'll dive into it a little bit. I'll let Tracy go ahead and pull her slides up. And I just want to remind everybody that we are using the chat. And we actually know that you pay better attention with our sessions when you're interactive with them and ask questions. So feel free to use that. I'll be monitoring the chat through today's session. And I'll let you go ahead and take it away, Tracy. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Like we talked about, we're going to be talking about attention strategies today. I love this topic, and I want to hear from you guys. When you think about attention or you hear the word attention, what are some of the things that come to mind? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Um, I think a lot of things come to mind when we talk about attention. And the nice thing about attention is that it's our ability to selectively focus or concentrate. Like I mentioned at the beginning, our attention is one thing that we maybe have a little bit of control over, especially when we're talking about cognitive impairment. Our attention works like a flashlight and it's a limited resource. So if you think about a dark room and you have a flashlight, you can pick where you shine that flashlight. As much as we want to pay attention to everything and we want to monitor the TV and our phone running around and the news in the background, we aren't able to do that as well as we like to think. Our attention is a limited resource, and it's important that we're choosing or selecting what we're putting our attention on. When we talk about attention, we talk about three different types. There is selective attention. So maybe you have that loved one that you have asked to take the trash out and they never seem to be paying attention when you ask. Maybe they're selecting to put their attention on the TV at the time or whatever else is going on. So, selective attention is our ability to pay attention to one thing. Our sustained attention is kind of what we put to the test with this webinar. It's your ability to pay attention for an extended period of time. So those two, selective attention and sustained attention, are going to be the two that we focus on today. And then the last one is our divided attention. So that is where we're trying to drive and hold a conversation and pay attention to the crazy people driving around us and merge that is our divided attention, and we're not going to focus on that. None of us really do divided attention well. And when we're talking about really building our memories and performing at our best cognitively, dividing our attention is never going to play out in our favor. So today we're talking about our selective attention and our sustained attention. Attention is important for a lot of reasons. Like we mentioned at the beginning, attention is really the building block to building a memory. It is the starting point. If we're not paying attention initially, then that memory doesn't stand a chance to come back up later or even make it into our brain. So that very first, that initial interaction where we're paying attention, we're really focused, we're leaning into the conversation is going to set us up for success and give us a better chance of recalling that memory down the road. There are four stages of creating a memory. And when we talk about creating a memory, those are first our attention, so our attention in that moment. And then our brain has to encode the memory. So it puts it into our brain and then it stores it. And then we have to retrieve it later. So the other three steps aren't something that we can really control. We can't control how our brain encodes. We can't control where our brain stores the memory. We can't even really control how well we're able to retrieve a memory. But we can be intentional and be mindful with our attention. It's the one piece of the puzzle that we have a little bit of control over. So I want you to think of your attention as kind of your one area that you can take back control. When we talk about mild cognitive impairment or memory loss, a lot of it feels like a tornado that we have no control over. Things are falling out of our brain without our permission. And the strategies that we're going to talk about today are some things that you can do to kind of set yourself up, especially when you're in a moment that you want to remember. When you're in your day to day or you're with your family, some things that you can be mindful of to give you the best chance to get that memory past just the attention phase. So that's strategy, those strategies. We break down into what we call a stride strategies. So we're going to go through these one by one. If you want to take a picture of this slide so that you can reference back to it later, you can. Like Megan said, this will be available on YouTube, so you can always go back and watch. But we're going to walk through each of these little strategies. So the first one in stride is the S, and the S stands for simplifying the task. It can be really difficult to maintain an attention for a task that's too complex or that takes too long. I have a laundry room that is still not finished painting. I have a little corner that is tucked behind the door and a little nook, and it's still not done because I was painting my entire house at the same time. So I know from experience that it can be difficult to maintain attention when a task is too complex or it takes too long. So we can reduce that by breaking down the task into smaller pieces. I could have painted my laundry room and then give myself a break and painted my kitchen another day, give myself a break instead of looking at painting my whole house at once. So that little nook that never got painted didn't seem like a big deal. And the other thing is to only do one piece of a project at a time. Set small goals so that we can check them off. We are creatures of habit, and the ability to finish something and feel good about it and mark it off our to-do list really does go a long way. So focusing on one small piece of a project rather than the whole thing, and then giving ourselves the satisfaction and sitting in that gratitude of actually getting it done can go a long way when it comes to building our confidence and helping us focus on the task at hand. So, breaking things down is the first step. In other words, we encourage people to monotask, not multitask. So, like I mentioned, none of us use that divided attention well, even though we may think that we used to be able to multitask better than we do now. Nobody really does it well. We always do things better. We're always sharper. We're always more alert and present when we're doing one thing at a time. So we encourage you to focus, put your entire focus and attention on one thing at a time, finish the task all the way through before going on to the next. Monotasking also helps you do well on a task and avoid mistakes. Again, building that confidence, especially when we're facing a new diagnosis or something like MCI. Something that I've heard from our participants is I feel like I just can't trust my brain anymore. Maybe there hasn't been a big mistake yet, there hasn't been a detrimental, memory slip, but even just with a diagnosis, people sometimes feel like they can't trust themselves or trust their brain as much. So setting yourself up for success, focusing on one thing at a time, um, doing it and doing it well and doing it all the way until it's completed so that you can mark it off helps build that confidence and helps us avoid mistakes in the long run. It also requires you to be patient with yourself. Again, had I finished painting my laundry room, I would have learned a lesson in patience, and I also would feel a little bit better about it. My confidence would be up a little more. So, monotask, don't multitask. And then the T in our stride strategies is teamwork. We always encourage our participants to ask for help. We encourage them to communicate to others that they're focusing on a task. Sometimes our attention is pulled in so many different ways by our loved ones, the people that mean the most to us. And if they knew that we were trying to focus, trying to pay attention, trying to be really present in this moment, then they would be able to support us in that. Asking for help and talking openly to others about whether it's trying to pay attention or that you're trying to really get a task done. If I had told my husband that I was really focusing on the laundry room and going to get it done, then he could have encouraged me in that. But it also gives others the opportunity to help you break it down and divide it into smaller steps. Somebody could help you with some of the steps, or they could just give you a new perspective. Sometimes just talking things out with somebody can go a long way in just giving us a renewed energy and a renewed perspective before we go back to the task. Sometimes it's not that we don't want to pay attention or we don't want to be present. It's that maybe we don't see the importance of the task or that it just feels overwhelming. So asking for help and just talking to others about it, collaborating, can go a long way with some of the pressure off of yourself so that you can focus and get it done. The R in our stride strategies is rate. And we always encourage everybody to slow it down. This is typically something that people are doing anyway. When I ask, what is one thing that you've noticed about your cognition? By and far, the most that I hear is that people just aren't as quick as they used to be, or people feel like they can't think as fast as they have before. So inevitably, they're slowing things down. Slowing a task down can increase our focus on it. It can also give us a better chance of doing it and doing it right the first time. Whenever I talk about this, I always give the example of driving to work. And if you're speeding and driving in quickly to work, but get pulled over because I'm driving too fast, or get in a wreck because I'm driving too fast, then there was no point in me driving fast anyway because I'm still going to be late to work. So slowing it down can help increase your focus and allow you to get it done and get it done right the first time. Some examples of slowing things down are giving yourself more time In our society today, we have such a fast-paced mentality. Everything is how many things can we squeeze into one day, or how much can you get done and how fast can you do it? And I think sometimes we just need to remind ourselves that we don't have to be in that big of a rush. We can give ourselves permission to slow down. We can wake up 10 minutes earlier, or we can take out some of the tasks that we have in a day. Maybe we don't need to go to three different stores and four different doctor's appointments in one week. Maybe we can take some of those out and save them for later. So giving yourself more time is a big one. Taking time to take a deep breath before you make a decision. There is a lot to be said about just breathing, just sitting there for a second, taking a deep breath in, a deep breath out, and then going on about your days rather than just acting quickly, making decisions, or your initial gut reaction. Just giving yourself a second to breathe, calm your nervous system a little bit, and then step back into whatever it is that you're doing. It's also a good idea to take regular breaks. That way you can pay attention and pay attention well the whole time that you're doing it. If we are um, marathon people and we like to just get things done so then we can rest later, I applaud you. But sometimes that comes at a risk of not performing at our best. Again, our attention is a limited resource like that flashlight, and we're running on batteries with our attention just like we are with our flashlights. So, taking some breaks to recharge is a good way rather than just pushing through, pushing through, pushing through, especially if you're feeling exhausted or feeling burnout. So, giving yourself that permission to really slow down, take breaks, take a deep breath can go a long way when it comes to our cognitive performance. The I in stride strategies is interruptions. And I think this one is very relevant to us today. I am listening to a book, an audio book right now, and one of the things that they talked about is that in our world today, the average person gets about one notification on their phone every 5 minutes in their waking hours. So if you think about how frequently our phones, let alone everything else in the world, is vying for our attention, then there's no wonder that people are having trouble paying attention, or we're all feeling exhausted. We're all feeling like the cognitive load is a little bit too much because we have these constant interruptions that have been normalized in today's world. So anytime that you can reduce interruptions, you're going to set yourself up better to pay attention, to be present, and to really perform your best cognitively. Some common interruptions are obviously our phones, phone calls and notifications, text messages, emails, a person coming in the room to talk to you, a pet trying to play with you while you're trying to get things done. The list goes on and on. Interruptions can be anything that gets in your way. And we can reduce those by managing our environment. Sometimes we can close the door. We can go back to our teamwork strategy and let those around us know that we're trying to pay attention and not to interrupt us. We can put our phone on silent or just not pick it up. We don't have to answer our phone every time it rings, but just setting our phone to the side, turning it on silent, is always good to give yourself a break. Um, Using Do Not Disturb is another good one. Our phones can be set up. I have my phone set up so that the only calls that come through are people that are in my contact list, and everybody else goes to voicemail. So instead of getting 30 phone calls a day like we do nowadays, everybody does. I know that you all can relate to me on that. We all get these crazy number of spam calls. And even just setting up my phone so that those extra calls are filtered out has done wonders for me. So, setting your space and your environment up so that it works for you and that your attention can be where you want it to be We want our cognition and our attention and our memory to be reserved for the things that matter to us, not preoccupied with the spam calls and somebody calling about our car warranty. So, alter your environment and reduce the interruptions. Similarly, the D in our stride strategy is to reduce the distractions. Distractions can be anything that disrupts our attention. So maybe we're trying to pay attention and we're trying to really be present at a family get together. We want to remember this moment. A distraction could be a loud and repetitive noise outside. Maybe it's the Atlanta traffic or construction next door. Distracting visuals or noise like televisions, especially just playing in the background, can be a big distraction. Background conversations can be a big one. If you're somebody that you know that your attention is a little bit harder to grasp, maybe going to those louder restaurants or busier restaurants isn't the best idea because it's hard to be present in a conversation in those loud environments because you're so distracted by everything going on. There's so much noise. There's people walking all over the place. You can hear your neighbor on both sides conversations. So being mindful of that and going places that are a little bit quieter or saving important talks, maybe you can go there at a time when it's not important talk. Um, but saving important conversations or catch up conversations for somewhere that's not as noisy so that you don't have those distractions and being really intentional about that. And then the other one is internal distractions. Those can be our thoughts. Sometimes one that I hear a lot is like during a conversation, if somebody's talking about something and we think of something that we want to say to them, then that is where our attention goes. We don't even hear the rest of their conversation. We're thinking about what we want to tell them so that we don't forget. But then we lose track of the conversation and don't hear the rest of what they're saying. That's an example of an internal distraction. Another example would be like lower back pain. Maybe you have pain so significant that it distracts you from your everyday. Some ways that we can improve that would be just removing or reducing those distractions. Like I mentioned, avoiding those busier or louder restaurants, turning the TV off. If it's an internal distraction, maybe we can be aware of that and work on our back pain. Maybe we go see a physical therapist or, try to manage things like that. If it's an internal distraction like the conversation, maybe we just have trouble with focusing, then we can be mindful of that and really try to stay present and engaged in the conversation and then think about what we want to say after they're finished talking. Um, Another thing that you can do is move away from the distraction or use headphones. One thing that we talk a lot about at the Cognitive Empowerment Program is having an attention space. So, an area that is free of distractions, free of interruptions, that we can go to when we want to focus. This room on the left, I know that we have all had rooms like that at some point or another, but it's very cluttered. That office space is not usable because of all of the clutter on the desk. It would be hard to sit there and actually get things done because we would be focusing on all of the other things in the room. But on the right side, we see a much more organized attention space. And this is somewhere where somebody could go every morning and maybe sit for 10 minutes and just write out their to-do list of what they need to get done for the day and prepare themselves for what's going to happen. Then maybe at the end of the day, they could come back, sit in this space, review their to-do list, kind of reflect on the day and see what all they accomplished, move things that they didn't get done to the next day, and really just kind of debrief with themselves. I like to call it brain dumping. The more that we try to hold in our brain, the more that we tried to keep up with shopping lists and to-do lists and appointments in our brain, the more that we're kind of cluttering that space. So the more that we can write down and kind of brain dump at the beginning or the end of the day, the better off we're going to be. Our attention can be freed up because we're not constantly having to think of things that we have to do to get done. We can just reference back to the list whenever we need to and then revisit it in the morning and afternoon so that it's not something that's constantly weighing on our thoughts. And then the last part of the stride strategies is monitoring your energy. I love this one, and I think this is probably the most important of all of the strategies that we talked about. But again, I want to give you permission to give yourself grace. It's hard to pay attention when we're tired. It's hard to pay attention when we're exhausted. And I think so often, especially in our world today, we are all running this fast-paced lifestyle, trying to get as much done as we can. And we're exhausted and we're distracted and we're tired. And it's hard to focus. It's hard on our cognition and it's hard on our attention and it's hard on our memory. And it's just hard to do life like that. So I want to encourage you to monitor your energy. And some ways that you can do that are to schedule things at a time of day when you feel your best. If you're a morning person, then schedule things in the morning. The doctor's office can find you a morning appointment. Maybe you do brunch with your family instead of dinner if that 7 o'clock dinner is hard on you. Plan it for the morning so that you can be present and be able to enjoy that moment rather than it being a stressful event. Um, Take regular breaks. Again, there is nothing to be said for cramming 22 things on your to-do list in one day. So giving yourself that permission to spread things out and take breaks throughout your day. Schedule them. Schedule a break so that you have that designated time that you can sit down and take a breath and enjoy your coffee or whatever it may be. Um, and then you can stretch or go for a walk or drink a refreshing beverage, anything to kind of sit down and be present with where you're at. Like Megan said, we really encourage people to take charge of the moment. Our memory or MCI can't take the present from us. It can't take what's happening in this moment from us. So things like stretching, going for a walk, sitting on the porch with an ice cold sweet tea is a good way to just kind of be present in the moment, recharge your batteries for a second, and then get back to whatever you're doing. We have a lot of exercises on our YouTube channel that is in the comments in the chat. And I encourage you to go take a look at that. If you can't do a whole, 30-minute yoga session, then maybe you just watch the first 10 minutes and just stretch for a few minutes with Megan or do a little bit of Tai Chi, whatever it may be. I encourage you to find something and just pour into yourself for a few minutes to preserve your energy and make sure that you can be present for the things that matter most. So, in review, um, these stride strategies are really important and valuable to keeping your attention on the things that you want it to be. Our attention is our building block for our memory, and if we aren't present and intentional with that, then our memories don't stand a chance. So, the way that we can do that is to simplify the task, break it down. T, lean on teamwork and ask for help. R, for rate, we can alter the rate of the performance and slow it down. I, for interruptions, we can reduce the interruptions, put your phone away, give yourself permission to not answer all of those phone calls. D, distractions, reduce distractions, turn the TV off, make yourself an attention space. When you guys log off of this webinar, I want you to think about where your attention space could be. In your house, maybe you go look for one. A little space that you can set up to be focused one time a day and just kind of plan things in a way that makes sense for you. And then E, energy. We encourage you to monitor your energy, avoid difficult tasks when you're tired, give yourself permission to take breaks. So our final takeaways. Um, your attention is your mind's flashlight. I want you guys to remember that little picture on the first slide and think of your attention as your way to focus on what you want to focus on, to make memories on things that you want to make memories on. Our brain is a limited resource, and if we fill it up with too much that doesn't matter, then we're not leaving room for the things that do matter. So, use your flashlight and pick where you're putting your attention, where you're putting your focus, where you want your cognitive strengths to be aimed at. And remember that that is the key part of forming a memory. That's the one thing that you can control. So use it wisely. There's a lot of strategies that we can use to improve our attention. I talked through a lot with the stride strategies. But I encourage you to use what works for you. The big thing that we emphasize at our program is that there's no one size fits all. Unfortunately, there's no magic formula that we can hand you for navigating MCI and navigating memory loss. But my goal is to just give you some tools to figure out what works best for you. Maybe creating attention space doesn't work for you. You don't have a spot in your house that you can do that in. So that part you're not going to sit with. But maybe you do choose this week to give yourself the grace to take some more breaks and lean into slowing things down and monitoring your energy. So I encourage you with this webinar and with all of our webinars throughout the year to just take what works for you. There's not a one size fits all, and it's also not an all or nothing. The pathway through MCI has a lot of curves and a lot of ups and downs. So figuring out these little strategies that you can add in along the way that work for you is going to be the best way for you to um, do the things that you can and to be successful in it. And that is all I have for you guys.
We do talk about attention a lot at the program. And one of the things that I think you said, giving ourselves grace, is nice to think about sometimes is that our attention can change day to day. It's one of those things, I think a lot of our participants get kind of hard on themselves when they can't remember things or pay attention well. Can you talk a little bit about how something like sleep habits or hydration also may be something that is impacting your ability to pay attention as well?
Yeah, I think that that plays a lot into the monitoring your energy. If we are not nourishing our body well, we're not moving our body, we're not staying hydrated, we're not sleeping well, then our energy levels are going to be lower and our attention is going to be less. If we're not feeling our best, then our body's going to put energy into surviving rather than these extra little things that we're trying to do. So, taking care of our bodies and really leaning into what makes us feel good and feel our best is really important and is the best way to make sure that we're um, operating cognitively, especially at the best that we can.
Yeah, and y'all feel free to let us know if you have any questions in the chat. One of the things that I think sometimes people are surprised by is it may seem like these strategies are only for the person with the diagnosis of memory changes, but what we see a lot of times is these can actually be very practical for care partners as well, as that to-do list doubles and triples and gets longer and longer and longer. It might be something that you're surprised how much it can change the life of a care partner too.
Yeah, for anyone, a lot of the stuff that
Yeah.
we talk about in class, I'm like, and this is me. Like, I mean,
Yes.
everybody has these opportunities to improve our cognition and especially our attention. And I think, like I said, in our world today, none of us are performing at our best because we're all trying to do so much. So I think some of these reminders are obviously irrelevant to MCI, but I think they're just so relevant to all of us, even, me, all of us.
And one of the things that we say a lot of times too is that, and you mentioned it a little bit, knowing your strengths. what are the areas that you really struggle to pay attention with? For me, anytime you put numbers on a piece of paper, I'm going to need a little bit more space and time to focus than if it was something that I have been doing, um, very easily in my daily habit. However, we also see people who are retired accountants, and maybe they were able to work in that noisy office or in that room that or that desk that had a lot of clutter in it in their career. But it seems like it's something that they're struggling with now that they've never struggled with before. Can you say a little bit about this notion of it may have worked for a few decades to have your attention be in one container, but maybe it's time to reevaluate a little bit differently as well?
Yeah, I always encourage people to kind of pause and take a relook at things with any diagnosis, a diagnosis of MCI or any life change, really. I mean, even, in my life, having kids, any big change that we go through, things are gonna look different. And I think it's hard, especially with a diagnosis of MCI, because we have these top performers. We've done things the same way for the last 60 years, and now things feel a little bit different. So I think, again, just slowing things down and taking that inventory of where our strengths are and trying new things, even if it doesn't feel natural. Maybe you were never somebody that wrote things down, but trying writing things down or relying on a to-do list, I think can go a long way. And it's hard because we're having to relearn ourselves and our loved ones, for care partners or for family members. It also means taking the time to relearn your loved one, your spouse or your dad or, your brother, whatever it may be, your friend, after you've known them for so long. And I think that that is hard for anybody, but it's especially important in this phase as we with the diagnosis of MCI because we're still very early. There's still a lot of changes that we can
Yeah.
make, and we're in the prime position to make those changes that can be impactful. So taking that inventory is important.
Yeah. And like we said, that some of these changes may be harder down the road to make. It may take a little bit of a leap of faith to make them now, but it's a little bit easier to incorporate it now in this early stage and let yourself really be trained by what is it that works for my memory now. And we have some nice comments coming in from the chat. Lorraine said, good breakdown of the ideas that we may all know, but slicing up the whole pie makes it a little bit easier to manage. And I love that analogy, Lorraine. Like sometimes we can't approach eating the whole pie at once.
Yeah.
And another question from one of our regulars, Ruby, we mentioned a little bit, and this is a whole other topic that we could spend 7 hours lecturing on. We mentioned a little bit about how, your attention is going to be affected by your sleep. And that's something we just want to know. We know from all of our data and research, we're doing a lot of sleep studies here at CEP, that can have a big old impact. From an occupational therapist perspective, Tracy, and I know this is a longer conversation perhaps, we can share some links in the chat about some other videos we've done around this. But for people who need to make up sleep, for people who are not getting sleep, any advice for those folks that know that's where the impact is coming from?
I think that is where monitoring your energy comes in. So
Yeah.
I think we a lot of times put pressure on ourselves and maybe aren't taking naps. Sometimes we just need to take a nap in the afternoon. And I know, especially, even in my family, I have people that don't like to nap and, feel almost shameful for it because it's,
Yeah.
wasted time. But I think just listening to your body and resting, even if you're not sleeping, taking a couple of hours to just rest and lay on the couch or we don't encourage, just laying in bed, especially in your bedroom. because you don't want to mess with your sleep habits. But just resting your body can go a long way. Nutrition also plays a big role if you're not getting enough sleep. Making sure that you're fueling your body can be something that you can do on the other end. But ultimately, I encourage you to talk to your doctor. If you're not sleeping well, we have a really great sleep expert that Megan, maybe we can invite here to the webinar to do a sleep conversation with you all. But if you're truly not sleeping, you've tried all the things and you're not sleeping, I encourage you to talk to your doctor because your brain needs sleep. Your brain revives itself, it recharges while you sleep. And if you're not, then you're putting yourself at risk for a lot of health things to go wrong and really impacting your cognition, whether you realize it or not, just because of sleep. I mean, a lack of sleep can look like MCI alone. So I think having those open conversations and asking for help um, is really important, especially with sleep. We underestimate how important sleep is.
Yeah, like I said, we could talk for an hour and a half about this, but please talk to your providers if you do notice that that is something that is a regular occurrence. But taking naps can be huge. Getting that bucket of rest filled back up again is something that it might make huge changes in not just your cognition, but your mood, the way you process information. It can be managed if it is a huge problem with your healthcare provider. So do not skip out on sharing that information at your next primary care visit. Otherwise, thank you all so much for just joining this conversation to talk a little bit about ways that we can refine our attention. Like we said earlier, take the things that work for you, leave the rest behind. We're going to post this video later on this week to our YouTube channel so you can come back to it and watch it and review it at any time. But otherwise, Tracy, thank you so much for being a part of this community, for really caring about this work, and just for sharing some of the insights from being with this population, not just in research, but truly in relationship and in person over the past few years too.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody. Well, we'll see you all next week. We're going to be talking a little bit more about these foundations of brain health. So this whole first quarter of the year, we're getting back to basics, doing things like, setting an attention space up in our home, starting to single task instead of multitask. So join us on that campaign this week, and we will see you all next week. We'll keep the chat open just for a few more moments. Feel free to save the chat when the session ends. Otherwise, thank you all so much for being a part of this online community, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.